Hello, my name is Tom Perloff and welcome to my podcast. I want to talk about reinforcement principles. All reinforcers, positive or negative, increase the likelihood of a behavioral response. All punishers, positive or negative, decrease the likelihood of a behavioral response. Next, I want to talk about positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is the addition of reinforcing stimulus following a behavior. Some examples of positive reinforcement are a mother giving her son praise, reinforcing stimulus for doing their homework, which is the behavior. A second example is a father giving his daughter candy, reinforcing stimulus for cleaning up their toys. Next, I want to talk about negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is the removal of something negative to strengthen a behavior. An example of negative reinforcement is teachers eliminating homework if everyone works hard in class. Next, I want to talk about punishment. Punishment is a consequence that occurs after a behavior that reduces the likelihood of it happening again. Now, the purpose of punishment is to eliminate behaviors. There are different types of punishment. Positive punishment is presenting an adverse stimulus after a behavior. An example of that would be a teacher who scolds a child after they interrupt. There's also negative punishment. Negative punishment is taking away something after a behavior. An example of that would be a teacher who takes away recess from a child who interrupts. Now I want to talk about the purpose of behavior. Now there are four primary purposes for behavior. First is social. Second is escape. Third is object. And fourth is sensory. Now I want to talk about each of the parts for just a little bit. Social reinforcement is getting attention. Physical proximity. Physical contact or praise. Object is access to preferred items. Sensory is objects providing stimulation of senses. And finally, escape. Escape is trying to get out of something adverse. Finally, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about determining the function of behavior. And determining the function of behavior is something that's a lot easier said than done. And it requires quite a bit of research and investigation. It's not something to be done flippantly off the top of your head. The first thing to do when determining the function of behavior is to collect assessment data. And I want to stop and take a moment to say it's really super important for assessment data to be collected accurately and well, because otherwise it wouldn't be possible to determine the function of behavior. And I've seen situations where people have collected bad data and it has created issues and problems. Now there's a couple of different ways to do that. First is by using rating scales. Rating scales are things that would be very helpful to figure out what sort of effect occurred after the behavior happened. A second way to determine the function of behavior is by doing interviews. Interviewing the teacher, interviewing the aide, interviewing the student. Ways to figure out why what is happening is going on. Another way to be able to do that is through ABC analysis: antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Now this way is particularly valuable because a lot of the times the behavior that a child does, or an adult, really is looking for a certain consequence or a response. And once this data is gathered, probably the most important thing to do is to compile it and to analyze it. It's easy to collect data and not do anything with it, but I think that it's super important to emphasize that the analyzing is a major part of determining behavior. So finally, this is Tom Perloff, and thank you for listening and watching my podcast.